read my sign? It says, "Hooray for human beings," and it's signed by a human being. Guess who? I put that there because this is what I wanted to emphasize to you. I wanted to tell you about it last time and did in part. That art is a great human activity. It belongs to us as human beings. And so, in a way, everything that I say will be kind of exaltation of the human being. It'll be hooray for people. Hooray for people that are mixed up, and hooray for people that are straightened out, and hooray for people that are suffering from a cold in their head like me. And I hope you'll forgive me if well, you can't get my germs, can you? It's another advantage of television. But hooray for people. Hooray for them. And you have to feel that way to get much pleasure out of art, actually. You see, art is made by people, and is preserved and loved and cherished and taken care of by people. And if it weren't for people, it wouldn't exist at all. We can be quite sure of that. It couldn't exist without us. We are the great art makers, the great art lovers. Whether we're conscious of it or not, and whether we think we belong to a museum or a society or something that is ardently and vocally and supporting art, doesn't really matter. Just because we are humans, just because we are human beings, we enjoy and make and delight in art. And some way, I think you have to have some kind of a love for human beings to have much love for art, obviously. And the more you love them, perhaps the more you love it. I've often felt that this is really the way that you love it, by being fond of people, by being interested in people, because always the work of art is the product of a person or of a bunch of people. And if you have the capacity to love them, no matter what they're like, you have a greater capacity right away, immediately, to love a work of art. I said also last time that time has something to do with it, and remember that time has not everything to do with it. That I object to out of sheer vanity. That I object to because making a judgment by time excludes us. And after all, time is people. So we might as well get in on the act. We might as well get in and make our judgments too. You know, the only thing that stops people is the fear that they will be wrong. Isn't that the only thing? I can't think of any other reason. A fear that they will be maybe made to look foolish in 500 years. They may look foolish in 500 years anyway, you know, no matter how they judge it. And so why wait for that elapse of time? And when you can get over the idea that all judgment has to be made by someone else, then you can start having all the fun of judging. And the picture that I drew for you last time and asked you to judge in relation to the Raphael, and maybe you think that was, in a way, cheating. And maybe because I drew it with my eyes shut and because I wasn't looking, that right away you have another factor, which is a kind of loving care that is a part of art. Now, you could see that I didn't care about what I was doing, and I tore it up so that you would know that I didn't care about it. But maybe this is one of the things which a work must convey. And the way that it conveys it is through the elapse of time. Now, it may be in the actual elapse of time of the creation of the work, so that you see last time when I made just a scrawl for you, this time I'll make something which takes a little more care, a little more consideration. Maybe I could carry on quite a little bit and make it a very elaborate thing. One of the things that loving care results in is a certain attentiveness, a certain willingness to spend the time, a willingness to put in all kinds of details, perhaps to make an elaborate background here, you see, which I think of in relation to this head. And again, there is a care in the placement of things as exactly as opposed to the total absence of loving care of the one that I made before. Now again, this is still too sudden, too uncareful, for any kind of real value, but imagine that it's going much, much farther in the direction of loving care. Now, that is one of the things which we simply must respect, when we come across it. And we have to have, just because we know the value of time. And when you see something like this Raphael Madonna, you know the care that went into it. In the first place, you know the time that went into the making of this. Not just this picture, and of course this is only a reproduction, but the time that the artist spent learning to be able to make the picture, not just the time he spent working on it. That kind of care, that kind of devotion, we always respect. And then when it is even more evident, as it is perfectly evident in this, the kind of love and attention that went into the perfecting of this image, because it has reached a point which is, I think, very near a perfection of the kind of thing it is. Now, that degree imposes on the beholder a kind of respect. It imposes something that makes him pause and look, and in a way sets the scene for his delight. But it doesn't guarantee it. It doesn't guarantee it. Now, perhaps I was unfair, since what I want you to do in part is judge the things which are made today. I was unfair to use the Raphael. So I brought you instead a Picasso, a painting, a woman, called The Woman in White, made, about 30 years ago. Now, here, again, I can ask you. Again, I can ask you to decide which is better. And again, I can say, just from the point of view of money, this one is more valuable. Again, I can say from the point of view of time and loving care, this one is more valuable. And I can say something else about this, which is contemporary, that might, I believe, maybe I can show you. Let me show you a picture which was made at the same time by an artist who is presumably as well trained. And I would be almost so bold as to say that my little scribble was as much of a work of art as this. Now, what is it that has happened in this? I think that right away your first feeling is that this is old. I mean, this belongs to an earlier time. It does belong to an earlier time, but what about this? Also belongs to the same time. You see, what has happened with this picture is the thing which can very easily happen and has to do with time. But it has to do with time in terms of the individual work becoming perhaps out of style or boring in your lifetime and my lifetime. See, not time in the sense of the lapse of centuries, but time in the sense of our own generation. And here, the artist has made something which is already exhausted. And in a way, time has been able to act on this. It has been able to let us discard this. In what? In less than 30 years. In less than 30 years. Now, there you can see one of the values or the qualities or perhaps you could say the judgment mechanisms of time. Is this business of whether it becomes boring in your lifetime. Now, why can something become that? Maybe you could say that this one is deliberately intended to be nothing but decorative, and that the decorative becomes boring. But this also is decorative. This is not some famous person, you see, that you become interested in because of the name. It isn't at all that. It has its strong decorative quality. But it isn't only decorative. I can show you another picture which I think you might find equally decorative, painted even longer ago, and not yet boring to people. Not yet having exhausted this kind of first level of time, the level of time in which we are still living, so that we can judge between work which was produced in 1920, say, and work which was produced in 1940. And there is a relatively short period of time. And we can have the experience of discovering that this work is already exhausted. Now then, what about when a much longer period passes? Then perhaps an even greater degree of what? Well, of something that I suppose can be called fascination, can be called the ability to hold and to capture our attention. That, in this instance, might be very great and very immediate. In this instance, I think it is too. This is much less, in a way, much less striking, even much less immediately dramatic. And yet it holds the attention. Why? I think because it contains human values. Values in part of dignity, that old-fashioned word. Values in part of a kind of strength, a great human value. I see you.